Let's get you some analysis on what to expect and also how this Brexit stalemate is impacting the situation. James Downs is a lecturer in comparative politics at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He joins Matt and I out of Hong Kong today. James, thanks so much for your time. How is the Brexit stalemate impacting the European elections, and would it radically change the course of the outcome if we did see Theresa May resigning tomorrow?
That's an excellent question. I would say that I can't foresee Theresa May resigning, perhaps, and I mean, she's going to be gone soon. That's for sure now. But I think Theresa May, she's under great pressure. The 1922 committee are right on her heels. As Steve mentioned in that report, Andrea Leadsom has now resigned, and other key cabinet officials have just had enough here. So I really can't see Theresa May lasting for longer than the next few weeks. And in terms of the European parliamentary elections, I think the serious issue right now for the Conservative Party should not be Theresa May. It should be about the overall picture. They could be facing electoral oblivion in these upcoming elections. We see the Brexit Party on 37% in the polls, and the Conservative Party are polling at around 6 to 7%. And other polling projections for Westminster elections have also put the Brexit Party on a massive amount. And the Conservatives are dropping again and again. So clearly, they could be facing electoral oblivion, not just in the European Parliament elections, but further down the line. If Theresa May does leave and let's say there was a general election, then there's a very real threat for the Conservative Party that Labour could pick up and form a coalition. Of course, that's all a bit moot at the moment because things can change very fast. But I think the Conservative Party is being a bit too short-term right at the moment. Of course, they've got to get someone in place for May. The problem that I see with Boris Johnson is that, yes, he has the majority, the support amongst the Conservative Party membership right now, but he's also a very deeply unpopular figure within the wider Conservative Party. And he's also become, people have become much more divided towards Boris Johnson in the last year or so.
Either way, do you think Boris Johnson would be the most likely contender to replace Prime Minister May if that were to be the case?
I think right now, yes, he's probably the most likely contender. But historically, if we just briefly look at previous Conservative leadership elections, the favourite person right at the start has never really gone on to become the leader and then the Prime Minister. If we look at 2005 with David Cameron versus David Davis was that key front runner. So I think right now, based on the bookies' odds and what the surveys and the polls are showing us, Boris Johnson is the favourite. But also, there are other key members of the party, like Dominic Raab, the former Brexit secretary, and also Javid as well. So there's a number of other candidates in place. And, Michael Gove was tweeted before, but he's also deeply unpopular. So I think Johnson is currently the favourite, but everything is so fast-paced and fast-moving that I wouldn't be at all surprised if Boris Johnson was also shifted out and another candidate came to the fore.
How does a new leader break the current Brexit impasse and stalemate, though? Say it is a pro-Brexit person that comes in to take the leadership. How do they then start negotiating and, I guess, altering the deal that Mrs May has not been able to successfully pass through the Parliament to then be able to leave the Eurozone on the 31st of October?
Well, that's an excellent question, and one which we all have on our minds right now. And the EU has spent around 3 years negotiating primarily with Theresa May and her key officials. And I really think a personnel change right now, it's not really going to be that helpful for the Conservative Party because the EU has all of these big red lines that they don't want to compromise on. And perhaps the most likely solution, if a new leader was to take over, might be to hold a general election. But again, whatever scenario does play out here, my personal opinion and my academic opinion is that, Britain is really the disunited kingdom right now. Whatever the best outcome that Britain can get, there's just so many problems, so many loopholes down the line. And so if Boris Johnson did take over as leader, he's also deeply unpopular amongst the EU Commission, also amongst the EU Parliament. So I don't really see how a new leader could solve that for the party. But of course, if the party was to hold a general election, then it could face this massive threat of electoral oblivion. Oblivion in the sense that they're no longer in government, and then Brexit could be kicked down the road even more. And that's the wider problem that I see right now, is that with the Brexit Party leading in the polls and most likely to come out as the number one party from this European Parliament election. Clearly, this is number one, a protest vote against the Conservative Party and the government. And number two, this also shows that it's not the case that the British population have shifted towards being Remain again, if those projections are correct that we see over the next few days in the election. So what we should really expect over the next few days is more uncertainty, more volatility, and the wider European Parliament elections are also going to show fragmentation and de-alignment amongst the mainstream parties, amongst the centre-left and the centre-right. So actually Brexit, of course, is the single most important issue for the EU right now, but the EU also has a number of, they've got to elect the next EU Commission president, and then they've also got to take stock of the elections and whether there's a record level of Euroscepticism and populists in the upcoming election.